Hi everyone, my name is Peter Callis. I sent out a stock alert this morning for VXRT, and I figured I'd do a quick trade review for you guys to give you an understanding of what I was thinking of at the open this morning, kind of my thought process going through the trade, why did I select this trade, so on and so forth. So hopefully you'll find some value in this. If you do, please give me a like below and share with your friends. So looking at the daily chart, that's typically where I start looking at a stock because it allows you to take a top-down approach. So when I started looking at VXRT this morning, what I did, and you can see it here, was I marked the close of yesterday and the high of yesterday. And I extended these lines all the way over to the right so that I could see them on a smaller time frame. Now, typically when I trade the open, I like to trade the 2-minute chart. And the reason for this is it gives me a little bit more granularity. That way, the price action, it's so quick in the morning that if I were to trade a 5-minute or a 10-minute, there's a lot of action that's happening within that one candlestick. So going to a 2-minute candlestick helps me see a little bit more granularity. It helps me see pullbacks that I may want to scale into a trade further with, so on and so forth. But let me go ahead and zoom this in. I want to show you guys a couple things. So right here on the right, this is the SPY. It's ETF that tracks the S&P 500. So you can see yesterday we had a big sell-off on it towards the end of the day. And during the night session, you can see we consolidated quite a bit. It trended higher, but then we broke below that support right before the open. Now, one thing I want to show you guys here is you can see right here we had a lot of sellers come in, and that price started to really drop with some momentum before the open. But if you come over here and you look at VXRT, you can see that the same price action did not happen. So what you see over here on the left-hand side, you can see a pivot point right here, and you can see it putting in a higher low, a second pivot point right here, and you can see it's finding some support around that second pivot point right here as well. So my thought process here is, okay, well, if the market is dropping and VXRT is not following the market, that tells me that there is more buyers in VXRT and it's supporting that stock from dropping when the overall market is dropping. Remember, we always want to trade with the direction of the market, but in this particular instance, this is showing us that, hey, there's a lot of buyers in this stock. So how did I find my entry and my exits? Looking at the chart over here, what I did for an entry was I played a breakout trade. And typically you don't want to trade breakouts during the lunch session. You really want to trade breakouts when there's a lot of volume coming into that stock. During the lunch session, a lot of the traders, institutional traders, they're taking lunch, so you have a lot of reduced volume. So breakout trades don't typically happen as often. But during the open, there's an excess of volume, and this really supports breakout trades. So what you can see here was my entry was at 1377, and I ended up putting a stop loss below the lows. And the reason I selected this area for my stop loss is I know that if I was a short seller, I would be shorting this stock below the lows because there would be a lot of buyers that were holding it that would get stopped out. So to protect me from those short sellers, I decided to put my stop loss right here below the lows, and that way I'm protecting my downside risk. So having a plan before you get into a trade is the most important part of this game. And you can see right here, I knew what my entry was, 1377. I knew what my exit was at 1290. I knew how much I was risking. The difference between 1377 and 1290 is what I was risking for this trade. So what that helps me do is that helps me figure out, well, what position size should I be applying to this trade to balance my risk across all of my trades. So having all of that information helps me to have a plan going into the trade, know where I'm buying, know where I'm getting out, knowing how to size that trade properly. Then lastly, you have to figure out, well, how are you going to sell this position? Everybody has their own different style of selling. Particularly, I like to scale out. I like to pay myself first and try not to give money back to the market. So I'll just kind of run down what I typically do. What you see here on the screen is you can see my entry, my stop, and then 3 target points. These target points relate to risk reward. So you can see the dollar value between my entry and stop loss is the same distance between the dollar value of my entry and target 1. If my trading plan had a 1-to-1 risk reward that was outlined, then I would take all of my profits here at the 200% mark because that would hit my 1-to-1 risk reward. If that is how my trading plan is outlined, in order for me to be profitable, I would have to have over a 50% strike rate, win rate, whatever you want to call it. Now, typically I don't do that. I like to scale out. So depending on the volatility of the stock, I will either take half or 3/4 of my position off at this first target. If it's trending very well, I'll typically take half. If it's more volatile, I'll typically take 3/4. And that's simply to take risk off, to pay myself first, and then it becomes easier to manage the psychology of holding a smaller position when at that point, when you take profits, you can move your stop up and whatever's left over, it's icing on the cake. So in this case, I ended up taking half my position off here. And then what I did was I moved my stop loss from this technical spot right here to just below the high of this pivot point. And what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to keep the other half of my position on and not worry about it going against me, because even if it went against me and I got stopped out, I would still make money on this trade. Luckily, it continued to move higher. So at my next pivot point, At my next pivot point, I ended up taking another quarter of my trade off, and then all the way up at the top, I took another quarter off. So this is typically how I manage my trades. The majority of the time, I'm taking 3/4 of the position off, but today I decided to go with half just because the pre-market price action that I saw in this trade. So I hope this video you found some value in it. If you have, please go ahead and hit the like button below and give me some feedback. Thanks, guys. Hope everybody had a wonderful day. Bye.